Sorry, I'm in a disheveled state. I'm going to shave off today. So anyway, hope everything's going well and you're going through these video series and everything. Today we're going to do part 1.4. That was how to organize economies and an overview to economic systems. By the end of this session, you should be able to contrast traditional economies, command economies, and market economies. And you should also be able to explain gross domestic product. And along with that, I already have a short video on gross domestic product. And you should also be able to assess the importance and effects of globalization. Okay, let me just reset the camera a bit so that we know where we are and what we're doing. Okay. So now, principally, what we need to understand here is, let's say let's think about a complex, system that a modern economy is. Let's try to analyze that a bit. It includes, all kinds of production of goods and services, all buying and selling, all employment, everything together. The economic life of every individual is kind of interrelated, at least to a very nominal extent, but still interrelated with the economic lives of thousands or even millions of other individuals. Who organizes and coordinates this system is one question. Who ensures that, let's say, for example, the number of televisions in a society provides, is the same as the amount that is needed or wanted? Who ensures that the right number of employees actually work in the electronic industry? Who ensures that televisions are produced in the best way possible? And also, how does all this get done? There are at least three ways that societies organize an economy. The first is the traditional economy, which is the oldest economy, the oldest economic system, and is used in parts of Asia, Africa, South America, definitely. Traditional economies organize their economic affairs the way they have always done, that is, by tradition. Occupations mostly try to stay back in the family most of the time. Most families are farmers who grow crops using traditional methods, and what you produce is what you consume. Because tradition drives the way of life, there is little economic progress or development. Then we have something called command economies, which are very different. In a command economy, economic effort is devoted to principally goals passed down from a ruler or ruling class, which is the command. Okay, the word of the ruler that actually works in or pushes the economy through. Ancient Egypt would be a very good example right now to explain command economy. A large part of the economic life was devoted to building pyramids, okay, for the pharaohs. Medieval manor life, during the medieval stages, the medieval manor life is another example. The Lord provided the land for growing crops and protection in the event of war. This would be the manor life in Europe and America, and the zamindari system in India. Okay. Excuse me. In return, the Lord of the land, that's a landlord, would provide the land for growing crops and also would protect the people within the land in the event of war. In return, these people who would live on the land of this lord would also be known as vassals. They provided labor and soldiers to do the lord's bidding. In the last century, communism emphasized on command economies principally. Communism actually emphasized these types of economies and supported these kind of economies. Now, in a command economy, the government decides what goods and services will be produced and what prices it will charge for them. The government decides what methods of production to use and sets wages or sets the level of wages for workers. Also, the government provides many necessities like healthcare and education, which the government keeps free. Currently, right now, it would be good to know that Cuba and North Korea have command economies. Okay, so we're over with the two. Now, what we need to understand is, although command economies, excuse me, although command economies have a very centralized structure for economic decisions, market economies have a very decentralized structure. A market is an institution that brings together buyers and sellers of goods and or services. These may be individuals or businesses. Now, the New York Stock Exchange, for example, or the Bombay Stock Exchange, are two principal examples of a market which brings buyers and sellers together. In a market economy, decision making is not concentrated to a few or just one person. It is totally decentralized. Market economies are based on private enterprise. The private individuals or groups of private individuals own and operate the means of production, that is, resources and businesses. Businesses actually supply goods and services based on demand, and in a command economy, by contrast, government owns resources and businesses. Okay, so that's the difference between market economy and command economy principally. Supply of goods and services depends on what the demands are. Okay, and a person's income is based on his or her ability to convert resources, especially labor, into something that the society would actually value. The more society values the person's output, the higher the income. Like out here, you can think of Lady Gaga. Okay. In this kind of scenario, market forces, not governments, okay, determine economic decisions. So that's why it's known as a market economy. Now, most economies in the real world are practically mixed. They combine elements of the command economy and the market economy, and even to some extent, a little bit of the traditional economies as well, the traditional economic systems. The United States economy is positioned towards the market-oriented end of the spectrum of these types of economies. Many countries in Europe and Latin America, which are primarily market-oriented, they still have a greater degree of government involvement in economic direction of having a market-oriented system. And what happens out here is these governments, they get more involved in the decisions of this economy than the US economy itself. So US economy is almost, it's towards the end of the spectrum of the the free market, or the the market oriented economy, the market economy. Now China and Russia, uh, over the past several decades, okay, have moved more in the direction of having a market oriented system, and but still kind of remain closer to the command economy. They still, yeah, more or less closer to the command economy end of the spectrum. So the Heritage Foundation provides information about how free and market oriented different countries are. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of, we're going to discuss it a little bit out here. For a kind of similar ranking system, but something that defines freedom more broadly, you can go for Cato's Foundation's Human Freedom, okay, Index. So that's Cato Foundation's Human Freedom Index, which will be given in my blog. Okay, it would be given in the blog. So now let's try to clear up a few things. First, let's talk about what countries are considered economically free. For this, you need to ask a question: who is in control of economic decisions? Are people free to do what they want, and are they free to work where they want? Are businesses free to produce when they want and what they choose, and to hire and fire as they wish? Are banks free to choose who will receive loans, or does the government control all these choices? Okay. Each year, researchers at the Heritage Foundation and also the Wall Street Journal look at 50 different categories of economic freedom for countries across the globe. They give each nation a score based on the extent of economic freedom in each category. We will just, for our study purposes, we go through Heritage Foundation's Index of Economic Freedom report of 2016, where they studied 178 countries. Now, some examples of the most free and the least free countries would be mentioned just after this. I'll even read it out for you. It's out here. I'll check it out and read it out for you, and possibly, maybe not read it out, maybe make a a picture out of it and post it out here. Okay, now several additional countries which were not ranked was because of extreme instability that made judgments about economic freedom practically impossible. These countries which were not included were Somalia, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, and Libya, if I remember correctly. The assigned rankings are inevitably based on estimates, yet even these rough estimates, measures, or data can be useful for various discerning trends. In 2015, 101 out of the 178 countries shifted toward greater economic freedom, although 77 of those countries shifted towards less economic freedom. In recent decades, the overall trend has been a higher level of economic freedom, liberalization, decentralization, etc. across the world, almost all around the world. Okay. Now here I'm going to post a table that will show you, economic freedoms of 2016. Okay, rankings from 1 to 12, and from towards the end from 167 to 178. So 12 most economic, 12 countries with most economic freedom, and 12 countries with least economic freedom of 2016. Now, since you've talked about economic freedom and you've seen the table with 12 countries with most economic freedom and 12 countries with the least economic freedom, it's time we talk about regulations. It's also known as the rules of the game. Markets and government regulations are always entangled. There is no such thing as an absolutely free market. Regulations always define the rules of this game in the economy. Economies that are primarily market oriented have fewer regulations, which is ideally just enough to maintain an even playing field for participants, which is, the field is pretty even for them. At a minimum, what we can expect is that these laws govern matters like safeguarding private property against theft, protecting people from violence, enforcing legal contracts, preventing fraud, collecting taxes, etc., etc. Now, conversely, even the most command-oriented economies operate using markets. How else, without a market, would buying and selling actually happen? The government heavily regulates decisions of what to produce and prices to charge. Heavily regulated economies often have underground economies, or something that we know as black markets. Okay, which are markets where the buyers and sellers make transactions without the government's approval, without paying taxes, without either of the sort. The question of how to organize economic institutions is typically not a black or white choice between all market or all government. It actually involves a balancing act over the appropriate combination of market freedom and also government rules. Now, we need to understand a little bit on the rise of globalization. Globalization, this is a rise in globalization that's happened over a few recent decades. We've seen a trend in the past recent decades toward globalization, which is actually the expanding of cultural, political, and economic connections between people around the world. One measure of this is the increased buying and selling of goods, services, and also assets across national borders. In other words, international trade and financial capital flows are happening. Now, globalization has occurred for a number of reasons. Improvements in shipping, air cargo, shipping and air cargo principally, have driven down, way down all these transportation costs or freight charges. Innovations in computing and telecommunications have made it easier and cheaper to manage long distance economic connections of production and sales, which has again helped in reduction in costs. Many valuable products and services in the modern economy can take the form of information. For example, computer software, financial advice, travel planning, music, books and movies, blueprints for designing a building. or even this video that I'm making for you people. This series of videos for people to kind of learn and understand economics as such. These products and many others can be transported over telephones and computer networks and the internet as such at ever lower costs with higher speeds of transmission or transfer. Finally, international agreements and treaties between countries have kind of encouraged greater trade. Okay, now the table that I'm going to show you now actually presents a calculation of globalization as such. It actually shows the percentage of domestic economic production that was exported for a selection of countries from 2010 to 15. And according to an entity known as the World Bank, the source of this table is the World Bank itself. Okay. Exports are the goods and services that one produces domestically, okay, and sells abroad. Imports are the goods and services that one produces abroad and then sells domestically, brings it in and then sells it in the domestic market. Now, gross domestic product or GDP, like I've mentioned in one of the reference videos, measures the size of total production in an economy. So the ratio of exports divided by GDP actually measures what share of a country's total economic production is kind of sold to other countries. Okay. Now, between 2010 and 2015, we've seen higher income countries like United States and Belgium and Canada. Okay, so I've put up, if I'm not mistaken, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, just four countries in each category. For higher income countries, for middle income countries, and also for lower income countries. Now, in recent decades, the export is to GDP ratio has generally risen both worldwide and for India and also for the US economies. Interestingly, the share of US exports in proportion to the US economy is well below the global average. In part, this is so because large economies like the United States can contain more of the division of labor inside their national borders. However, smaller economies like Belgium, Korea, and Canada need to trade across their borders with other countries to take full advantage of division of labor, specialization, and economies to scale. In this sense, the enormous US economy is less affected by globalization than most other countries. In fact, the US has spread its wings and its existence across almost across the globe, almost in most of the countries. Okay. Now, the table above, the table that I've provided here, indicates that many medium and low income countries around the world, like Mexico and China, have also experienced a surge of globalization in recent decades. If an astronaut in orbit could put on special glasses that make all economic transactions visible as brightly colored lines and look down at the Earth, the astronaut would see the planet covered with huge connections. Okay, that's what this is all about. This connection between everyone. That's called globalization. Despite the rise in globalization over the last few decades, in recent years we have seen significant pushback against globalization from people across the world. who are actually concerned about loss of jobs, loss of political sovereignty, increased economic inequality, and these kind of issues. Now, prominent examples of this pushback include uh, the vote that Great Britain, United Kingdom, came up with in 2016 to exit the European Union. They named it Brexit, Britain's exit. And also another one, which was the election of President Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who was elected President of the United States. Now, these are these are very good examples to show the pushback that people want against this globalization. Hopefully, you now have an idea about economics. Information actually provides the necessary knowledge to make the best possible decisions on how to utilize these scarce resources, and also how well and optimally to utilize them. Finally, at the end of this session and practically the end of this chapter, I can now say, welcome to the world of economics, and hope we progress together in a more lucid manner. Please like, comment, and share, and do subscribe and get us a lot many more subscribers, which is very much required, so that I can increase. You've already seen some changes and some modifications and some enhancement to the videos that I'm making out here, but I'd very much want to make these more attractive, more interactive, and perhaps with a lot of links and direct interaction, and maybe even sometimes we could have online classes in future. So please, it'll all depend on the number of subscriptions I get. We have around, I think, just a little below 1,000 subscribers to this Gitanshu Adhikari YouTube channel that I have. But we're definitely targeting going to tens of thousands. Right now, our next hurdle would be to cover the 2,500 mark, and then the 5,000 mark, and finally the 7,500 mark, after which we'll target the 10,000 mark. The moment we have 10,000 YouTube subscriptions, and those who are who would regularly follow, and out of this 10,000 subscribers, if we have at least 70% liking and commenting and sharing these videos, it would work wonders for us, and I could definitely enhance and increase the quality of videos that we post out here on. Take care.